Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome to the latest edition of the Gifts for Glory podcast. I'm Dave Ebert, and I'm really excited to have this friend come and join us for our latest edition of the Gifts for Glory podcast. Dave Siriano, he is the CEO of Creative Nation Media. He's the director of a Skitz team based out of Orlando, Florida. He's also the writer, director, and star of Dave TV, the director of 360 TV, which is a free streaming service and app for Christian programming. He wears a lot of hats and stays incredibly busy, including getting ready to be a grandfather for the first time, we found out during this interview. So big shout out to him and his family as they're getting ready to grow. In this episode, we talk about faith and comedy and how to use our creative gifts for the Creator. So I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation with a great friend. He actually appeared on Well-Versed Comedy's social distancing improv show a few weeks ago. So I hope that you caught that episode. It's available on our Well-Versed Comedy page, or actually you can find social distancing improv available on the Creative Motion Network, exclusively on Roku, so check out that series library. This week's Devotions with Dave segment. This one's going to be a little bit longer than normal, but I hope that you'll find some value in it. I'm going to be reading a segment out of Ephesians 6, verses 10 through 18. This is talking about the whole armor of God and the need for it. Reading from the New Living Translation, Ephesians 6, 10 to 18. A final word. Be strong in the Lord and in His mighty power. Put on all of God's armor so that you will be able to stand firm against all the strategies of the devil. For we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unforeseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places. Therefore, put on every piece of God's armor, so that you will be able to resist the enemy in the time of evil. Then after the battle you will still be stand on the belt of truth and the body armor of God's righteousness. For shoes, put on the peace that comes from the good news, so that you will be fully prepared. In addition to all these, hold up the shield of faith to stop the fiery arrows of the devil. Put on salvation as your helmet, and take the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. Pray in the Spirit at all times and on every occasion. Stay alert and be persistent in your prayers for all believers everywhere. And that is Ephesians 6, 10 to 18. And as we go further into 2020 on into 2021, things seem to be getting darker and seem to be getting closer and closer to the second coming of Jesus Christ. We know that each day we do get closer, we don't know. And Jesus told us that even He, the Son, doesn't know. So we have to be prepared. And the best way ready is to have on the full armor of God. You want to keep on the helmet of salvation, protecting your head, your mind, your eyes, even your mouth from things that would distract or take away from your ability to serve the Lord. So the full armor of God gives you a great image of the fact that we are in a war. We're in a spiritual war. Now, remember verse 12, and verse 12 is very important here. It doesn't tell us that our enemies are the Democrats or the Republicans. It doesn't tell us that our enemies are the people who might be from a different racial background, a different national background, or even, dare I say, a different gender or different sexual preference. Those are not our enemies. Verse 12 tells us, for we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies. Let me repeat that. For we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, against evil authorities of the unforeseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places. So if you think about it that way, there's nobody that's posting on your Facebook feed. There's nobody that you see in your news feed that is your enemy. You may have disagreements. You may have different perspectives, but they are not your enemy. So anytime that you feel the anger rising up, anytime you feel hostility rising, anytime you feel angst rising when you read somebody's post on social media or you read somebody's email or somebody's comment, remember, they're not your enemy. You may be able to defeat them, but the real enemy is the one that's behind the scenes, the one that you can't see, the one that you need to be prepared with the full armor of God to do battle with. And the thing is, it's not even your job to defeat the enemy. You have authority over the enemy, but the enemy's defeated. Christ defeated the enemy. It's just our job to fight to the very end until he returns. And in order to do that, we need to take on the full armor of God. Put on every piece of God's armor so you'll be able to resist the enemy in the time of evil. Then after the battle, you will be standing firm. Stand your ground, putting on the belt of truth and the body armor of God's righteousness. For shoes, put on the peace that comes from the good news so you'll be fully prepared. And in addition to all these, hold up the shield of faith to stop the fiery arrows of the devil. The shield of faith, not only is it protective, but it is also it's not only defensive, but it also can be offensive as you push forward against those flaming arrows, against those attacks. And then the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God, again, is another weapon that can be both offensive and defensive. In that you're going to intentionally seek to upset or cause division by being offensive. This is offense, like going forward, advancing the kingdom. So I want to encourage you that God has given us the tools. He's given us the helmet of salvation to protect our eyes, our ears, our mouths, and our minds from the attacks of the enemy, which includes everything that the enemy has as a way to reach into our lives. And I'm talking about social media, I'm talking about email, I'm talking about television, I'm talking about movies. These are all avenues that if we are not careful, if we don't have the helmet of salvation on protecting our minds, the enemy can use these to twist and turn and mislead us. So put on the full armor of God. Be ready, because the enemy's coming. And the enemy is running out of time, so he's flailing like a wild animal that's cornered. And he's going to try to take as many down as he can, try to limit us, that he has no right or authority over. He's going to try to limit our effectiveness in reaching the people that he still has. So with that armor of God, let's advance the kingdom of God. Let's go get those people and rescue those people who need to hear the gospel. It's not our job to save, but it's our calling, it's our duty to wear that full armor of God into battle and to give the good news to those who need to hear it. It's totally up to them to receive it, and it's totally up to the Holy Spirit. It's totally up to Jesus Christ. It's totally up to God to do the saving. It's just our job to go tell the story and let them make that decision. So put on your full armor of God and get ready. No matter what happens in the election cycle, no matter what happens as things progress politically or nationally or societally, if we put on the full armor of God and fully trust in God, we're going to be okay. If you're struggling, if you're somebody that is overwhelmed with fear, paralyzed by fear, if you're concerned about your salvation, whether or not you're going to be in heaven with God for eternity, if you have any questions about faith, about eternity, I'm here for you. Dave at giftsforglory.com, Dave at gifts4glory.com, and let's talk, because I want to make sure that you have that blessed assurance that the Bible tells us all about. I want you to know that you know that you know that you know that you will be in heaven. And the Bible helps us find that out. And I would love to help you on that journey if I can. So that is our Devotions with Dave segment. Thanks so much for indulging as we went through the whole armor of God, Ephesians 6. So let's get to our interview. We get to interview a great friend of mine, a very funny man, a very creative man, and a man that's got a truly decent heart and a truly decent way about him. And he's just an amazing brother in Christ. I'm talking about Dave Siriano. He's in charge of 360 TV, which has an awesome show right now called The End, which is a post-rapture apocalyptic a TV show available through 360 TV. And Well-Versed Comedy is going to be a part of 360 TV with his line coming up very soon. In fact, by the time that this goes live, it's probably available. Check out 360 TV. Check out Skitz. Check out this interview. It's Dave Siriano on the Gifts for Glory podcast, where we celebrate and promote men and women using their gifts for God's glory. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now joined by Dave Siriano on the Gifts for Glory podcast. He's the CEO of Creative Nation Media, director of the Skitz, a really hilarious sketch team out of Florida. He's the writer and director of a great TV show called The End, which is available on 360 TV and also Amazon. And 360 TV is a free streaming service and an app that brings you Christian programming. You want to download it, get it on your phone, give you just a wealth of programming to watch, including the Skitz, The End, which is a great show, and a lot of other stuff, including Dave TV, which is appropriately named for our guest at this time. So, Dave, welcome to the Gifts for Glory podcast.
It's nice to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So you are a man with many hats, many jobs, and many titles. How do you find time to get it all in?
You know, it is hard. You really have to plan, and a lot of it's almost like I improv life, because a lot of it is improv. Like people will call me and say, "Hey, do you got time tomorrow? I want to shoot a quick video." Because I also have a business, Creative Nation Media, which I help businesses and churches, and I film whatever they need. And so people are always coming at me, and you really have to sidestep. Plus, I have a good team that I can say, "Hey, do you want to edit something, or do you want to help me direct this, or something like that?" So, yeah, time. I wish we had 30 hours in a day.
Right. But we get to 30 hours, we're like, if we just had 32 hours.
2 hours, exactly.
So Creative Nation Media, that is that primarily in Florida, or do you travel much for that?
I'll go anywhere. I've had some clients, they've had me go to San Francisco. I actually last October got to take my wife to Singapore.
Wow.
Right before all this COVID stuff. That was amazing. Singapore is a great country. We did a convention out there. It was like a software convention, and we filmed the whole thing, but we had a lot of downtime. So, man, that country was amazing. So, yes, we travel, but, we also have a lot of clients here in Central Florida.
Awesome. Now, tell us about 360 TV. I know it's an app on the phone because I've got it downloaded. It's also a website where you can watch a lot of programming. How did that start? And what is it about?
Yeah, it's a really cool story. My pastor in Rochester, New York, I was working there as a media director. It was about 2005. And we were in a staff meeting, and he was like, we're putting our church service on TV, and we had like a half-hour show every Sunday morning. He's like, we're putting it on TV, and we're getting like 4 calls a month. And usually it's from the same lady. And he's like, what can we do to spice this up, that people will watch? And I said, what about a Christian comedy TV show? Mm-hmm. And about 5 days later, he was like, okay, we'll try it. And so we just got volunteers from the church, and, we had some ladies cook, for the days we were filming. And that's how it started. We just kind of put some skits together. And what we did was we had a guy in our church that worked at local NBC. And he, we were like, can you get us anything that, we could put this show on besides a Sunday morning? So he got us on Friday nights at 1:30 in the morning after Conan.
Okay.
Back then.
Right.
And man, we started seeing people come to the church, call, email. We got this email one time from a guy and his wife. And he said, we're sitting here at a bar watching your show. And he said, it's hilarious. And then another time, one of our couples who was on the show, we're in Toys R Us, and this lady jumped like from her little customer service perch that they on. She came down the stairs, and she ran up to them, and she said, 360 TV. And they're like, yeah. And she's like, your show on love and relationships saved my marriage. And we were like, oh, man, yeah, it was so awesome. We were like so pumped. And so that's where it got its start. And we did probably 40 or 50 shows up there under the name 360 TV.
Mm-hmm.
Then I moved to Orlando to help my brother-in-law start a church down here. And I kind of forgot about it. And it wasn't until like probably 3 years ago, 2017, I started getting hits on our Facebook. And I was like, I wonder what's going on. Well, I found out they were replaying our episodes on Juice TV, which is like the TVN youth program. So just from there, it steamrolled into the network. We named 360 TV then Skitz, because I said, I want to start a network where people can get free, clean Christian content. And, and that was a funny story because my parents were here like in 2016. They were visiting and I was showing them this real funny YouTube video. And what happened was right at the end of it, another video automatically started playing and, F-bomb. And I'm trying to turn it off. And my mom's like, what's going on? And so I was like, man, we need something that anybody can just go to and watch and not have to worry about their kids, So that's how it, kind of long story, but that's how it got started.
Awesome. You brought up Skitz, and also part of all that is Versus, which is another sketch. But Versus takes and basically dramatizes or through entertainment explains pieces of the Bible. When did that come along as far in the trajectory of 360?
Yeah, that was last year. And why I did that was, first of all, I volunteer at church as the children's church teacher.
Okay.
And once a month I'll serve, because I love kids. And one day we were just starting out and we had about 22 kids in class and, range from ages, 6 to 11. And I said, okay, today we're going to tell the story of Jonah. Who's heard of Jonah? And like 2 hands were raised out of 22.
Oh,
and I was like, what? So I was like, that's it. Kind of. So now Skitz, we had a lot of kind of 30s and up people that were acting in it. And I said, what if we do a younger show where we just take verses of the Bible or stories and just make that into, a show? And so basically that's how Versus came about. And, we also have another show called CC's Universe, which is for kids. And so we've kind of tried to hit every age range. And we have a new show coming out, which is called Faith in Real Life. And it's about a middle schooler. So we're trying to touch, for original programming, we're trying to touch every age group. And then we have our YouTubers, like your awesome show that's going to be coming on. And so we're trying to do that as well.
It's really fun. And like you kind of touched on, it's really great to have something where you can get all these videos and not worry about it going from, something uplifting and edifying to all of a sudden F this or Cardi B or whatever. It's just like, it's a safe spot. It's like, okay, my son or my daughter, they're watching 360. We don't have to worry about them wandering into a future conversation we're not ready for yet.
Right.
So you've got a variety of things. It's not just the comedy. You've got some educational stuff. And what are some of your favorites that are on there? I know maybe it's like asking you to pick your favorite child, but what are some of the things that you really think are great pieces of 360 TV?
Well, I love comedy. So, Skitz is kind of my baby, and I love that. But we have a YouTuber, Kirby is a Boss. You can look her up on Instagram or YouTube. She's got a lot of followers, but she is phenomenal. She's so good, and she does some comedy. She does some drama, some real life, some really cool stuff. So she's probably one of my favorites on the network. But then it seems like during COVID, like everything I did was comedy. Because, you know, in my life, I've been through a couple tough challenges, and my pastor, you know, came to me after a big challenge in my life, came to me and said, you know, the joy of the Lord is your strength. And so I really clung on to that, and it became like, it was so weird because I went through this challenge. I went through a divorce, and not, you know, it was out of my control. And so I was in a rough spot, and she's like, the joy of the Lord is your strength. So literally I went out and got like a smiley face, guy that you put on your antenna of your car. I decorated my car with like smiley face stuff, and people thought I was a weirdo, but it was just, I needed God's love and his joy. And so it just translated into everything comedy. And I was funny. Dave TV is all about having fun. Well, during this COVID, it was like something shifted. And that's where I got the idea for The End and some other dramatic things that we have coming up. And it's new for me, but I really like it.
Yeah, The End is phenomenal, and I know that you've put out some casting notices for some other shows. I don't know how much you want to talk about those yet until they actually start producing, but we'll talk more about 360 TV, The End, and everything shortly. But I want to get into a little bit more of your history and, you know, find out what made you the man you are today. So what are you comfortable with as far as sharing about your testimony?
I share with a lot of people. I was a pastor's kid, grew up in the Assemblies of God. My dad was an Assemblies of God pastor for 40 years. He retired a few years ago. And that'll be a follow-up question, because one of the things he does now is he teaches end time prophecy. And so that's where The End kind of came out of. You know, he's always studied Revelation and Daniel, and, you know, taught me and my sister about that. So I kind of followed in his footsteps. You know, God called me at probably I was 12 years old, going to church camp, that I was going to be a pastor. And so I went to Zion Bible College in Rhode Island and became a youth pastor in New York City. You know, and then became a pastor in Pennsylvania. And about four or 5 years into being a pastor, you know, just went through an awful divorce. And it was, you know, I always tell people, you know, my ex-wife and I are fine. You know, it was just, she didn't want to do it anymore. She didn't want to be in the ministry anymore, you know, and it devastated me, but
sure,
you know, that's where it happened. So I, you know, for about a year, you know, my head was, you know, I was still pastoring, which was amazing because my church wanted me to stay. And I would get up in the pulpit and preach. And I really felt the power of God on me. And as soon as I would get down from the pulpit, this cloud would just, you know, come over me for the whole rest of the week, you know, and finally I had lost probably 50 pounds, you know, during that time. And my brother-in-law, who up in New York, you know, I went to the doctor, and my doctor said, if you don't leave and do something else, you're going to die. And so my brother-in-law, I told him that. He sent the U-Haul truck that day, picked up all my stuff and brought me to Rochester, New York. And so one of the things I always did was play hockey. And so I got a job as a referee at this rink. And little by little, I became the assistant manager of the rink, and then had my own rink. And it was probably 3 or 4 years that I was just getting over everything, and God was just working on my heart. And then I met my wife now, and she was amazing. And my brother-in-law came to me and said, "Hey, you used to do videos, we used to do the VHS tape where we used to, splice everything together for my youth back in the, early 90s. Well, then he said, you do video, you've done videos. Why don't you do videos? It was just when video announcements were coming big in church. And so that was the beginning, the beginning of my time. And I just taught myself, Final iMovie, then Final Cut Pro. And now here I am.
Nice.
Sorry it was so long.
Oh, no, not at all. I wanted to go back. So you brought up, 12 years old church camp. Is that kind of when you made the faith your own instead of kind of just following in your dad's footsteps? Or was there like a real moment where, it became your faith and you remember that moment?
Yeah, there was a couple. I was actually 5.
Oh, wow.
I was 5 when I remember being at church camp again, but because my dad was the director.
Oh, okay.
And he called people for salvation. And I remember going up and my mom was playing the piano and just kneeling at the piano bench. And I still have that memory, in my head where I said, this is what I want, even at 5. Now, obviously, people will say, well, but then really at 12 years old, we had a speaker at camp and it just, tore us all up. And that's when, I said, God, I want to do what you want me to do. So that was probably the defining moment.
Okay. Was there ever a moment where you're like, I don't buy this. My dad's taught me this my whole life. I think I had these experiences at 5 and 12, but I don't know if this is real. Was there ever a real challenge of your faith?
Never. But I fell away from God.
Okay.
17, 18.
Yeah.
It was just like, hey, my friends are partying. I was on the hockey team and, a lot of those guys are just brutal,
Right.
We always joked like baseball and basketball players, they'll walk into somewhere and if, they're all tough and say, oh yeah, you want to fight? Okay, let's go. Let's fight. But hockey players will just throw that first punch. They don't even give you time. And so I just kind of, I've always known that there is a God and I've never, ever once said, I don't believe this. Because I've seen people get healed. I've seen people, their lives changed. I remember one time my dad was praying for a guy who was an alcoholic and he came in with alcohol in his breath and everything. And he prayed for him and the guy instantly just fell and gave his heart to the Lord. And afterward, his wife said, I don't even smell alcohol in his breath anymore. Like it was such a transformation. So I've seen these things in my life. And so I never doubted it, but there was a time, in that 2.5 years where it was just, and I'll tell you one funny story. I was 17, junior year of high school, and my dad, his church felt like he was renting a place and they didn't want to rent to us anymore. Mm-hmm. So he used our high school. So I remember one time, because bulletins, our pictures on the bulletin of our family, and this tough hockey player comes up to me and goes, hey, is this you? Is this your church? And I'm like, no, that's not me. And it was just kind of embarrassing. Of course it was, but it was just, a little embarrassing. So I just kind of veered off a little bit into that world. But I knew God was calling me, and it was almost like it was a direct stop. Like I was partying, and then, I'm going to Bible school.
Nice.
And so I smoking, drinking. And from the time I said, okay, I'm going to Bible school, I've never touched any of that again. So,
Nice. Now the obvious question is, when a hockey player asks you with the bulletin, "Is this you?" Did he ask you two more times and then a rooster crowed?
It should have happened because I was definitely a liar.
So you go to Bible college, and it's directly aimed at doing pulpit ministry, Sunday mornings taking over a church.
Yeah, it really was. And, again, nothing against college, but it was a lot of book learning, and then you get into taking your first church and they're like, "Hey, we're going to do the budget." And I'm like, "Uh-oh, we didn't learn anything about this in Bible college." So I think, looking back, it was great. And I was actually on the traveling comedy skit team in college. So that was a blast, And so I think some of the real world stuff that we did prepared me for, actually for what I'm doing now. But I think, and I know a lot of people say this, but high school and college, it'd be a lot better if instead of algebra, they were learning real world stuff that we got to go through, and so.
Yeah, most schools, they don't have home ec anymore, just those basic life skills. So
right.
You get out of school and like, okay, here's your money each paycheck. And then you get to the end of the paycheck and you realize, oh, wow, there's still a lot of month left.
Yeah, absolutely. Or, the big one was how to deal with a church board.
Yes.
We won't get into that one, though.
Well, I think that basically you just study either Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and just remember that the fire is the board.
Yeah.
And as long as you got Jesus with you, you won't get burned up.
That is a real life analogy right there.
So you're in Rochester, New York. You start tapping back into this love of video and stuff, and then you end up moving down south to Florida. How long after you got to Florida did everything really start picking back up as far as pursuing and finding ways to create video and different things to become your ministry?
Well, so, I still kept it going because when we moved down here, I was helping my brother-in-law start a church. So I was doing the videos.
Okay.
Again, we only had 12, 15 people. So it wasn't like, huge. And then I did get a job with Rethink Homelessness down here in Orlando. And one of the videos I created was called Cardboard Stories. You can look it up on YouTube, and it's got 6.5 million views.
Wow.
And so that was kind of one of my cool achievements. And, we did some really cool stuff as Rethink Homelessness. And I was downtown filming almost every day in Orlando, homeless guys and ladies, and it was eye-opening. I remember this one guy, he was all dirty and everything, but he seemed in his right mind. And I was talking to him and he was like, "Yeah, I got a job. I got a job and I'm going to start next week." And I was like, wow. He's like, what a turnaround. And he's like, "Well, not really. I usually, do a job for like 6 months. And, usually it's like either a seasonal job or something. And I rent a motel. And when the job is done, I'm back here homeless on the street. I hide my good clothes in some bushes and
wow.
And then wait for the next job opportunity." So the stories were just, this other guy, he was probably 56 years old. He had run a $250,000 a year pizza business and ended up getting a divorce. His wife left him, took all his money, and here he was on the streets of Orlando, and it was just sad. And so I made this video and it really took off. George Takei from Star Trek, he retweeted it, and that's where it really went viral. And so, you know, I kept the video stuff going, and that was just to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, you know, this opportunity opened up where, you know, Facebook started getting hits again. And then I met this lady whose husband had a studio, and he's like, you can come anytime and film for free. And, you know, God just opened the doors, and all these actors and actresses who are Christian were like, we've been waiting for this. And those are the guys you see on Skitz, you know, because I'm telling you, even casting for the end and some of these other episodes, I'll talk to, like, I talked to this one actress, and this has happened numerous times. And I'll email her and I said, man, I really loved your audition. You're really good. And their first response back to me is, I just want to make sure that I don't have to make out with anybody or take my clothes off and I'm just like, oh my goodness, what is happening? You know? And I'm like, no, you're not going to have to do any of that, you know? But,
No.
You know, so people are looking for not just us that are consumers, but people who are actors and actresses. They're looking for an outlet that they can share their faith without having to worry about some, you know, skeezy producer or director, you know, that's going to make them do something terrible.
So are all your actors, especially, are they all Christian, or do you work with the people who are not saved that just want to work on something that's positive?
Yeah, well, most are Christian, and everyone else I kind of take case by case, and I let the Lord kind of direct me. There was this one actress who auditioned for Skitz right at the beginning, and her mom contacted me and said, you know, she's been wanting to do this, but this is kind of like her last chance. You know, she said, if this doesn't work out, I'm not doing it anymore, because she has Asperger's. And so I said, absolutely. So her and her mom came for the audition, and they were Buddhist. And wow. I was like, hey, you know, we got her in. She was great. She helped me edit stuff. And then her mom made our 360 logo. She helped us do the live stream when we did some live shows. And through that, the daughter, whose name is Talia, she said, Mom, I want to go to Los Angeles. And so she moved there about 2 years ago, and she was cast on a show just recently I'm trying to remember. It was the old USA, or not USA, the old network where they did all the Christmas stuff. Freeform.
Oh, Freeform, okay.
Yeah, so she is on one of the shows on Freeform because of her Asperger's. They were looking for someone who had like that kind of, you know, handicap, and she's thriving out there. And her mom said, you know what? If you hadn't have taken her on, she wouldn't have been where she is.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of Christians would have been, Buddhist, I'm like, no, you know, let's see what you can do. And, you know, I think this is a God thing.
Yeah. And who knows what's going to happen months or years down the road, where those seeds of just the love and willing to be a neighbor to somebody, you know, that may pay off someday, and that may help her, you know, wake up. But, you know, when you plant seeds, you can't control whether or not they grow. It depends on what happens with the soil. And
that's right.
And I agree with you too, that in the right situation, you don't have to hire strictly Christians for what you're doing. My improv team is different because we are a comedy ministry, and right. I don't want to put somebody on stage in front of people that isn't in line, because that they don't have the same filter and the same desire to be edifying with the comedy. So, right. But in other projects, I have no problem working with people, because they're coming in my path for some reason that God's going to pour into them through me, I hope.
Right. And don't get me wrong, I stalk everybody on Facebook, you know, because, you know, again, like, especially with like skits or verses, you know, it's okay if you're not a Christian, but, you know, if your Facebook is full of, you know, being drunk and partying and this and that, you know, that's something I'm not going to tolerate. And I tell people, you know, when they come on, even though, you know, and I want to say this, most people are interested in God or have some sort of, you know, hey, I went to church when I was younger, sort of vibe, you know, and so I'm like, okay, you know, let's get you on. But, you know, I put the rules out there. You know, I said, I don't want to see you, you know, because now you're on our Skitz team, you have a name to uphold, you know, in a Christian show. And so I let them know first meeting that, you know, don't get too crazy on me.
Yeah, right. And I think that's good. You got to protect the brand, because when you're producing a show, no matter how big the viewership is, you're in the public eye and you have a brand to protect, not only Skitz, but also the brand that is Jesus Christ. And you want to make sure that you don't bring shame on the name because, oh, they're on a Christian show and all of a sudden they're doing this, that, and the other thing. Now, that doesn't mean that, you know, Christians can't fall into something like that. But at the same time, you don't want to take that risk and just overlook that when you bring them on your team.
Exactly. Yep.
So speaking of Skitz, are you considered like a pseudo uncle for TC and Julia's child that they just had this year?
Yes, those two are amazing. You know, it's really funny because TC is a magician.
Wow.
He's amazing with magic. He was wowing us with card tricks and, you know, all these sleight of hand things. Nothing demonic or anything.
Right.
I actually, like, he wasn't even cast. And I'm like, hey, does anybody know any guys? Because we were very short on guys. And one of the girls says, you know, my friend TC, he's a magician, but I think he'd be interested. So he came down and auditioned, and he is funny. And so I was like, you're in. And his wife is sitting in the corner, Julie, and she's really quiet. And I'm like, what about you? You want to jump in? You want to jump in on a skit? So I actually had a couple skits where a married couple, and so she jumped in and she was like really good. So I was like, man, what a great start. Them two are amazing.
I truly enjoyed this conversation. I hope that you are enjoying listening to it just as much as I had having it. We've got more on the way. Now, one of the things that I love to do, other than doing great podcasts like this, doing improv, acting, and performing, is telling my journey to faith. I will be so blessed if your church or organization will consider me as a speaker at your next event. My story is about hopelessness to hopefulness, depression and suicidal thoughts to joy unspeakable, anger and no direction to freedom and purpose. I'm accepting bookings as a speaker and minister to speak to your group, your organization, your church small group, your youth group, and I would love to come share my testimony. So let's talk about how God's story through me might be used by God at your next event. Email me at dave@giftsforglory.com. That's dave@gifts4glory.com. dave@giftsforglory.com. And let's get this conversation started. We return with more of the Gifts of Glory podcast, where we celebrate and promote men and women using their gifts for God's glory.
So he came down and auditioned, and he is funny. And so I was like, you're in. And his wife is sitting in the corner, Julie, and she's really quiet. And I'm like, what about you? You want to jump in? You want to jump in on a skit? So I actually had a couple skits where a married couple, and so she jumped in and she was like really good. So I was like, man, what a great start. Them two are amazing.
They are, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, on 24 Flicks, the season that you have up there of skits. The first skit is the two of them with it, there's no lines. It's the heart skit.
The heart. Yep.
And I mean, it's not funny, but it's got a powerful message, and it's really enjoyable. I really liked that one.
Yeah, that was one of our favorites. Right from the start. I actually was going to have someone else do the other part, and they didn't show up. So I was like, okay, Julie, jump in. And man, they tore it up. That was definitely one of our favorites.
Was that entirely scripted, or is it kind of like, this is the story, you guys kind of improvise and do it how you want?
Yeah, basically I just told them, look, here's the result. You're taking his heart, giving it, crushing it, giving it to God, but you guys can do any mannerisms, any kind of different things. And like, I had seen it done a couple times, but there was a couple moments when they just blew me away with their actions and how they did it. And I was like, yes, I'm behind the camera. Like, yes, that was perfect. And they actually did it in one take, like all the way through.
Wow.
Cause usually everybody's like, we're going to do that again. I'm like, nope, no reason.
Awesome. And there's a lot of those cool moments in the different skits with skits. I think of the one where I can't remember if it was Julia or not, but walked on set, had almost like this zombie makeup on, and everyone's just kind of trying to give her all these tips on how to be pretty. But then you had the Jesus character walk by and like, hey, come with me. And it's just really, that one was really cool. And then there was the other one where you had the voiceover of these. You had these two ladies were just sitting next to each other. One was dressed almost like a punk goth look, and the voiceover was like, she looks so different. Maybe I should invite her to church. And you're thinking, oh, it's the plainclothes conservative one talking, and then boom. And that one, I really like that skit as well. And there's dozens of them that I was like, these are really cool. I need to move to Florida and try to audition.
Oh, you'd be on. I mean, if you ever move, you're in. I remember you making that like prank on your Facebook that you were moving. Remember?
Oh yeah.
I think to Florida, and I was like, yes. I'm like, yes.
Oh yeah, on April 1st, I posted that I accepted a ministry position in Deltona, Florida.
Wow.
And all these people were like, congratulations. And it went all day. Even after I corrected, I was like, guys, this is a joke. Still get congratulations comments, or, why didn't you say something first? But
I wish it was true, because you'd be on in a second.
Well, I will play this interview for my wife. Like, hey, maybe we should move to a place where this, she's actually in the room next to me, so she's giving me the evil eye right now.
Yes.
But
tell her it's gonna be winter soon, and it's gonna be 60, 70 degrees here. It's gonna be beautiful.
And my mom and my sister, they live in Ocala, so we've got some relative down there.
Yeah.
We'll see what the Lord opens up for us. But so let's get back to 360 TV and the end. We were talking before we started that I really appreciated the grit and the fact that it gave you some reality. It wasn't the Hallmark Christian of like, oh, things are going to be hard, but not that hard. But you were telling me before we went on that was more of your assistant director saying, no, let's go there.
Absolutely. She's 27 years old, and her pet peeve is Christian movies that are just, kissy face, religiosity is what she calls it, where she, like, I grew up in the church. So I'm used to, dear Jesus, come into my heart, please cleanse me of my sins, all these big words. And so when I start to direct something like this, I'm like, dear Jesus, come into my heart, cleanse me of my sin. And she's like, stop, no more. She's like, it's going to be more gritty. Like, God, I need you, and so she just gave us a fresh look at, like, we wrote the script, and the girl who's writing the script is closer to my age. And so my assistant director just tore into it, and she's like, we're going to change this. And I'm telling you, it came out really good. And, I think our first stab at doing a series like this really came out well. And we have season 2 probably half written right now, but I already know what's going to happen, and it's going to be gritty. We're going to be into the tribulation. So there's going to be earthquakes and, guns and some things that, are going to be a little, it's going to be cool. I think everyone's going to really like it.
Yeah, season 1 ended on almost like a Lost-esque ending, where it's like, wait, which is the reality? She just had this moment, and now she's waking back up. So it is really a cliffhanger that if you see it, and I hope that everyone that's listening will check out the entire series, it makes you wonder, well, what's next? And that's where season 2 is going to be really fun to watch.
It's going to be really interesting. And even the actors, they haven't got the script yet. And they're all asking me, like, what's going to happen with my character? And I always say, we're going to kill you off. Because, like, I was talking to my assistant director. Her name's Cherie. And I'm like, we got to kill somebody off. Like, it's a tribulation. So I think we're going to off one of the major characters at the end. But it's almost kind of like, because, people really, like, they're calling me wanting to be a part of this. Like, we don't even want any money. We just want to be a part. And so I think, we have the idea to go 3 seasons.
Okay.
So season 2, there's going to be a very wild cliffhanger where someone is going to die. And so Cherie is like, well, who are we going to kill off? And I'm like, probably the one whose schedule can't make season 3. We were all laughing. So who knows?
And I think that one of the things that makes it so gritty and makes it so real is that the main character is 13, 14 years old, something like that.
Yep.
And it's not like somebody that was an adult that, because it's based around the rapture, around the end times, and sometimes you think that, well, kids, there'll be kids, so kids will be taken up. But once you've reached that age of accountability, you're either going or you're not. So I think it was a bold choice making the main character that young, which also makes them that helpless and that much in need of somebody that has a car or has resources, because they were completely unprepared.
Right. And that, again, my dad teaches end times, so I've been leaning on him, and I think he has a pretty conservative outlook. He's pre-trib rapture, which a lot of people are, but he always runs into people that are post-trib, that think we're going through the tribulation. And he's like, it doesn't matter. Jesus, one way or the other, you need to accept Jesus. And so let's not worry about the logistics. And so we're going to take some license, because the girl, Kylie, is playing someone who is about 14, but she's only 11.
Oh, wow.
Which is crazy. I tell people that, they're like, what? But she looks older and she acts older. And I tell you what, Kylie was amazing on set. Like, never wanted to stop, didn't complain. Like, she was incredible. And, she's going to do some big things, I think, just because of her character and her drive. But we're definitely going to take some license in season 2. And some people might not agree with certain theological things that are happening, but we're going to tell the story. And I'm basically, honoring my dad and telling it kind of from what he believes in his point of view, which again, I think is pretty conservative. I remember a cartoon that he showed me, and there's these two guys going up in the rapture, and they already have the wings, you know, and one turns to the other and goes, "I told you it was pre-trib."
At that point, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. So, you know, whatever. But we'll take a little license with it, and you know, some people might not agree with one or two things, but I think the overall point is you need to know Jesus.
Right. And in that conservative background, I know because my wife and I are both credentialed in the AG like your dad, so we share that same philosophy of the pre-trib and things like that. But my thing is, what if we got it wrong? We got to be prepared regardless.
Right.
If it's pre, mid, post, or if there is no rapture, whatever. Whenever Jesus comes to get us, we need to be ready. We need to be those bridesmaids that had the oil in their lamps and are ready to go in, and not wait to the last minute like, oh, wait. Because some people wait for the 11th hour and time's up at 10:59.
Right. Yeah. And again, that's the way my dad talks about it. You know, and one thing we really talked about, which is interesting, and you're going to see this in season 2, is he doesn't believe the chips that you see now, like that people are getting, like dogs have. He doesn't think that's going to be the mark of the beast. And his reasoning is, like, when you get a chip in your hand, or I don't know who would get a chip in their forehead, but a chip in their hand, he said anyone can just cut that out, you know? And he said the Greek word for mark of the beast is an actual like tattoo mark. And so he explained it to me this way. He thinks it's going to be almost like that mark you get at Chuck E. Cheese, where you have to put it under the lamp to actually see it. And so he thinks it's going to be some kind of mark that will be able to be scanned. And because it's on your forehead, it really won't be visible. Remember the old movies where there was a big marker of 666 on someone's forehead?
Right.
He thinks it's just going to be this mark that you really can't distinguish, but it's more like Minority Report. When you're coming into somewhere, the camera catches it and you're good. And so it was just a pretty interesting conversation I had with my dad. So you're going to see that in season 2. It's going to be pretty wild.
Yeah. And I almost think that the chipping, it sounds scary, but it's almost too obvious. And I don't think that the enemy that we share is going to be that brazenly obvious. Like, oh, here it is. Right. It's going to be something simple. Although it could be a chip because they make it a very valid case. Oh, well, you can use it like if you're diabetic, it'll tell your blood sugar, or it'll tell you when you're low on iron or something, and it'll seem reasonable to take it. And then, who knows?
Who knows?
And there's some people that...
Well, my dad said, look, I don't think the chip is the mark of the beast, but I'm still not taking it.
Right.
Nope.
I don't believe it is, but just in case.
Just in case.
There have been some people that have speculated that these cell phones are the mark because they're always on our wrist now. They're always around our head. So,
yeah, you never know.
Who knows? But so yeah, the end, it's phenomenal. It's it was 8 episodes first season. Yep.
Oh no! It was 6.
6. Okay.
Yep.
So you are going to break it up. So like season 2 will probably be 7 or 8, and season 3 will be 7 or 8. So that way you're not having 3 seasons of 6, because that might be too.
That would be no good. And actually, there is going to be 8 seasons in season 2, or 8 episodes. So
okay, good.
Definitely not 666. That is a thought, though. That's funny.
So it's available on 360 TV, which is an app. It's also website 360tv.com. Mm-hmm. And you can download it on your phone, and you'll catch. You can find skits, you can find verses, you can find Kirby is a Boss, Dave TV, and a whole host of other things. Just because we're all watching screens, we're all watching TV from time to time. Why not watch stuff that's actually going to leave you feeling better than something that's going to make you want to repent?
Yeah, that's right.
So be sure to check it out. And you touched on it earlier. We're very excited that His Line, which is a well-versed comedy show, is going to be a part of 360 TV. And we're really proud of the show, and we love any opportunity for people to see it, because comedy is our ministry. That's what we do to bring light to the world. And then when people research, why do we do clean comedy? Why are we Christians doing comedy? It's because we want to bring that light to the world. We want to make a difference, and we want to show people that there is a hope. And no matter what we see on this level, there's a hope, and laughter can kind of break the monotony of what's right here, so we can look up a little bit.
Yeah, let me tell you, His Line is a great show. You guys do a great job. You know, we have a team that screens all the YouTube content that comes in, and you know, everybody looked at it and it's a no-brainer. They're like, absolutely, we need it on here. You know, it's very well done, very well produced. You know, you guys do a really great job.
Thank you so much. And we're hoping for season 2. Obviously, global pandemic issues are preventing that from happening right now. And there was a thought of, well, why don't we do it while we follow the guidelines, and we'll improvise 6 feet apart with masks. I'm like, no, we're not going to date this show. We're going to wait till it's ready.
Exactly.
And so one of the things that we do on our show is I fire off 7 quick questions, and they're random, and just get your best answer. Just kind of get to know you, cover anything that we might have missed in the conversation. So for the first question, the interrogation, your favorite sport to watch?
Hockey.
And this follow-up, do you still play at all, any rec leagues or anything like that?
I don't. I played till I was about 40. And I played this tournament one weekend, and I came home and slept for 2 days, and I was like, that's it. It's pretty grueling. But I love it. I love watching it. Baseball, basketball, football, I usually don't catch a lot until the playoffs, but hockey I can watch anytime.
Nice. Okay. Question 2 would be, if you could go back, where would you have gone to a different college, and what would you have taken?
Oh, man, that's a great question. I had a choice between Zion and Valley Forge Christian College. Again, I probably wouldn't have, because, I really liked my time at Zion, but I think it would have been cool to go to Valley Forge, because they did offer some other artsy things that might have got me on the road sooner to what I'm doing now.
Question number 3. Is there a video of a production that you were a part of, on screen or just producing, that you pray never sees the light of day again?
Oh my goodness, that is a good question. There was I did second camera for a production, and it was about sex trafficking. Not from a Christian point of view, but it wasn't nasty or anything. But it was like, we shot it so well. Like, I know what I had in my camera lens, and I knew it was going to come out really good. Well, the person who edited it did just so horrible.
Oh no.
That I don't even tell anybody I was on that. So.
All right.
Anyway.
Question 4. What's your biggest regret in life?
Oh, wow. Biggest regret. Probably, and I always tell my second wife, I wish I would have met her when I was younger and seen, knowing, again, I wouldn't have had the 3 girls that I do have, because I have 5 daughters.
Oh, wow.
So that's something else you didn't know about me. But, so people always ask me, would you, and I'm like, no, because I am who I am. But I would have loved to meet her earlier. Because she's amazing.
All right, other end of the spectrum, what has been your proudest moment?
I think right now that my daughters are serving the Lord. They're you've how do I explain it? You find a lot of parents, like even who I talk to, that their kids are gone. They don't talk to them. They're mad at them, and I'm glad my family has stayed together, because what binds us is the love of Christ.
Awesome.
And so even when you drift away, you always know that the Father's there waiting for you. So
this kind of a follow-up to that about your daughters. Have they made you a grandfather yet? Any of them?
Funny you should ask, because my daughter, she just came over tonight. She is 6 months pregnant.
Oh, congratulations. Is that the first one?
First one, and it's a boy.
Oh, congratulations.
So he's going to be spoiled. My son-in-law is a huge Giants fan, and I'm a Dolphin fan, and I keep telling him I'm getting him all Dolphin stuff. Miami Dolphins.
All right, question number 6, official question number 6. The places you've been, whether it's New York, I think you're also spent some time in Connecticut, and now you're in Florida. What has been your favorite place to live, regardless of the weather?
I loved growing up. My dad was a pastor, so I've lived in all the New England states except for New Hampshire. I loved living in Connecticut. It was just a nice place to live, very relaxing. So I think that was probably my favorite, but my second was Boston, Massachusetts. That was a great city, historical. One day we jump on the train and go down and, see Paul Revere, where he rode through the streets, and, so that was a great place to live too.
Awesome. So final question of the interrogation is going to be, budget's no option, time is no option. What project would you most like to create, and who would you most like to work with on that project?
Wow. So there is one show, and I'll be small-minded for this one, but there's one show that we've already got ready to go. We're just waiting for funding for, and it's called Chasing the Ghost. And basically, we want to make a show where Christian or non-Christian can watch it. And so we have a good outline ready to go, and basically it's chasing the Holy Ghost. And so what the host of the show is going to do is travel around the country and document miracles, people that have been healed, people who have had a financial miracle, healing from depression, and so I am really excited about this show, and I'm praying, that we get funding, and so to answer your question, it would be great if Matthew McConaughey could actually comment.
So
I love his acting. But.
Yeah. So every time somebody reveals a miracle, all right.
All right. Yeah. He's so good.
Well, apparently he's a podcast host now, because he had this groundbreaking interview with Anthony Fauci a month ago. So he's getting ready to do some hosting. He might try to sell you a Lincoln if you bring him on set.
That'd be great. I'll take it.
Awesome. So as we wrap up, our final question is always, for anybody that's looking to step into their gifts for God's glory, to use their gifts to honor Him, to serve Him, what would your wise counsel be, whether it's in production, acting, or in general? What would your wise counsel be for them?
It's really weird because we're living in a different time where years ago people would caution you, don't get that tattoo. You can never be a newscaster or a pastor or, again, I think first thought is go for it. I always, Nike had it best. Just do it. Like, if you want to do something, do it. I'll never forget. This was probably 2 years ago, and I was filming for this nonprofit, and one of the people that I was interviewing, I said, she was younger, and she's like, I've always wanted to do what you're doing and be a photographer, videographer. And I said, well, why don't you do it? She said, because my parents said I'd never get anywhere. And so now I'm in nursing school. And I was just like, you're torn because you're like, okay, nurse is, you're always going to need a nurse. But I told her, I said, do it on the side, go out and take pictures and do what you love to do. Even if you have that full-time job, if you love taking photographs, making videos. My son-in-law, he works at the courthouse and he has a 9 to 5, but every Saturday, every Sunday after church, he's out filming skateboarders and, he's making these really cool videos and, who knows what'll happen. So whatever it is in life, if God has called you to do it, He will make a way for that thing to come to pass. Don't give up. Don't let anybody else tell you what God has told you, because what God has told you will come to pass.
Awesome. That's great advice and a great word. Dave Siriano from 360 TV, Skitz, Dave TV, and a million other things that you're doing down there in Florida. I love your work. I love what you guys are doing. Huge fan. And when I found the Skitz on 24 Flicks, I started stalking you, and I found you, and I found 360 TV, and I've just been a huge fan ever since. So I appreciate all that you guys are doing now.
Oh, well, thanks for having me on.